Welcome everyone, it's Evelyn. First, let's just take a deep breath. Okay, I put out a video yesterday and for some reason my microphone wasn't plugged in right because I was using it, but it sounds terrible. So I'm doing this over because I also researched more information about the information I presented. So I wanted to give you a more thorough presentation of that. So I'm doing this video because the day before yesterday I was watching Jen McCarty and she had Charlie Freak on her video. And he was updating her on a lot of the information about Covfefe and adrenochrome, and I wanted to expand on that information and show you a chain of events in our history that brings all this stuff together, perhaps with some terms and symbology to make you understand how this all relates to each other, but also to then awaken your own activation as far as figuring out new codes that are also related to this same situation. So on the video that I watched with Jen McCarty and Charlie Freak, and Jen McCarty's Cosmic Gypsy, if you know her by that name, they talked about Q a bit. I'm not going to talk about everything he talked about, but the symbology of the Q is the Ouroboros of the snake eating its tail, and then the Q of the tail, or that the line on the Q is the symbolism of God reaching down to us. So first, just really quickly, for those of you not familiar with the terms, Covfefe is C-O-V-F-E-F-E. It can be arranged many different ways because it's just a reference to cobalt, vanadium, and 2 parts iron, Fe and Fe. Okay, but there's other meanings to it regarding the spiritual warfare basically that's going on between the dark and the light. So it means what I just told you. It's cobalt, vanadium, and 2 parts iron. It's also the adrenochrome, which is the blood from the adrenal gland that you hear about being taken from babies, which is true, and I'll give you the information about that as well. It's adrenal blood. It's just pure in babies, obviously, than it would be in adults. And it gives people healing at very high levels, but makes them low at the same time in the Covfefe. So it's, it's like a withdrawal, where you have to get more and more. And what's the movie? I'm trying to think of the movie, but you get what I mean. So what happens to them is they become doubly low in iron, as well as cobalt and vanadium, by taking the blood. Now the blood isn't those things. It's from the adrenal gland. Okay, so it has those things in it, but it's not the same thing. So Covfefe is actually an alloy, which I'm going to tell you about that in a second as well. But so the adrenochrome is different, and notice the chrome part of this, because chrome came up again in my research. So we have the blood from the adrenal glands, and that's what people want, to get a high. And he was talking about the Venetians, and I kept thinking the Phoenicians, but he was referencing Venice. So I believe he was speaking of the Venetians and saying that they're all behind this as far as the Illuminati and the Cabal. And again, this is Charlie Freak, so please go watch the video on her channel if you'd like to get more specific information about what he was talking about. He basically referenced the fact that they are using their minions as a storefront, so to speak, so they're never seen, right? So all the worst people you see are just the storefronts. They're not actually that, the 1%. So the goodly, godly, and is always perfectly accurate is a catchphrase of theirs. And also the Covfefe means in Arabic, I will stand up. And also something that I researched I found it on thegoldwater.com. the sacred ceremonies of, we talk about covens in our reads all the time because that does come up, but the 8 sacred ceremonies in covens, or the wheel of the year, the 8-pointed star, when an innocent child ritualistically is sacrificed, at the moment the blood begins to flow, the entire coven can invoke Satan by chanting the Covfefe 3 times and then times 3. So 3 times, 3 times. Okay, so those are the 4 different things I was coming up. He had talked about 4 different things regarding what Covfefe meant. So 3 of those things were the Covfefe, the actual alloy, the adrenochrome, which then depletes you of these things and they go into a withdrawal. And then it means I will stand up. And then this sacred ceremony that I found online, I don't know what his 4th thing was, but you can check out the video. So he did talk about the Americans having taken down a big Australian tunnel and then teaching the locals on how to do this themselves, and talked about how the Tesla technology was being used to take down these tunnels, that UMB means underground missile bases, and that DUMB, or DUMB, means deep underground military bases. Okay, so these are these deep tunnels. He spoke about Tartarian in Melbourne, and I'm assuming he was talking about Australia, but there's Melbourne in Florida too, which could be related actually. And Tartarian tree is a tree with black grapes, and they talk about the blue grapes. So this is very important because this is just something I found here, the Tartarian that I looked up. So Tartarian is those, they look black, but I guess they reference them as the blue grapes. And there's a center in Melbourne with, I guess, Tartarian trees. I'm not sure what he was referencing exactly, but it sounded like the Venetians had grabbed up a bunch of buildings there, and I don't know if there's an underground connection there, but there may be. The Venetians destroying evidence in Beirut before the Americans were able to get there, and then using Tesla technology again, blasting, he said, every 3 seconds for like 8 to 10 hours straight. So, what else could they be doing besides trying to destroy these tunnels? He referenced the Borgia family, which is a Spanish family known for their lack of morality, which, kind of went off the radar a long time ago. And then he said, I thought he said Farnagies, but I assume it's Carnegies since, they're one of the wealthiest historical families. So something I found later in my research yesterday after this was one of the wealthiest came up was Basil too, Basil, or Basil II, and that was from 960 to 1025 from the East Roman Empire. There may be a significant connection to Basil because Basilica also came up when I was doing my research. So something he also spoke about was the difference between the how you'd like to live. Would you rather, loop in reincarnation and keep coming back in karma, which is the left brain, or cell regeneration, which is basically staying at 0 point and using the right brain, and that the dark can hold their power if they cut off the right brain from others or put them into fear. He referenced from the Bible and John the Baptist. Kundalini is the mother, and the water baptizes the body and heart, where the sacred oil lights the pineal gland, or the fire baptizes the head and mind. And you'll see, actually I'm going to show you the reference here. This comes up later in the talk too. But this is some symbology of that, okay, with the snake. And the grapes, there's grapes sticking out of the snake's face, okay? So that's the grapes. That'll come up again later. So also talking about that, and then the pulsing magnetic energy like Buddha, and he referenced the big belly of Buddha, referencing taking those deep belly breaths, and then the Tesla towers pulsing 360 degrees. So John Galt also came up. Who is John Galt? As supposed to be JFK Jr. And I looked at this Atlas Shrugged. That's a YouTube website, Atlas Shrugged, a speech, and then the minutes were 4:41. So notice that, because 41 and 14 are very significant for the codes regarding the Illuminati. And that was the minutes of this. And I look at him, and the guy who's talking, who says they are John Galt, his eyes definitely could be JFK, but he would have had to have some work done on the rest of his face from what I could tell. But Charlie Freak was referencing that when he saw him on something else, this bald guy, that he looked just like JFK. So he has a Twitter name, Q on Galt, because his name is John Galt, is Q, I think it was just QON Galt as the Twitter name. Also, the numbers came up. He said JFK's number was 555, and in looking up my research, Jesus also came up as 888, so those numbers were significant. And all John Galt, that speech that he did on YouTube, he quoted, all the evil needs to win is the consent of good people, which has come up recently, to make sure that you do not consent to things that you do not want, because a lack of consent is basically consenting. So it's just with your intention. He also mentioned that Microsoft is now Q. It's no longer dark. It went from dark to light a few years ago. And again, referencing the 41 to the 14. And then he did bring up Hitler as well, regarding Aryan versus Aryan with a Y. So it wasn't about a blue-eyed, blonde-haired race. It was about eugenics, and wanting, what they're doing now, the power of that. So Arya in Sanskrit means nobleman. So again, regarding the Aryan race, and they were Indo-Euros, and Vedas came up as well. The Hindu texts that are very important, because Veda means knowledge. Looking up, I also came across Saint Venetianus and Saint Arianus. And it was weird because I swear it was the same picture of both of them, but they lived very close together, but one was Egypt and the other was Italy. So the Venetian one was Italy of Camerino, who was beheaded in 250, and then Saint Arianus was Egypt, who died March 4th, 287. So very close together. It was only 37 years apart. But they were both martyred, and the pictures, I swear, it looked like the same picture that came up. And St. Paul came, this was so weird. A header came up with it said Saint Athanasius, which I wasn't looking up, but you know how it comes up wrong. So Athanasius versus Arius came up 22316, and quote unquote said St. Paul's Center, and it was 1441 views, literally. So there's the 14 and 41 again. So, and I wanted to point out too, we're going to talk a lot about Tunis in the history of how this all comes together, but Morocco's come up as very significant for me as well, and also a place of Eden. So Tunis and Morocco flank Algeria, and it's like Tunis, the country, reaches out to Italy. If you look at the map, they literally look like they're reaching out to each other. And the island off of Italy also is going to come up in my information here as very significant, and it may be significant to the underground work. And just looking at the countries too, it's like Egypt reaches out to the Middle East, and Greece reaches out to Turkey, and above Turkey is Armenia, Georgia, and then Russia. So there's different connections that I was seeing by just looking at the map. So and Spirit's connecting with me. So, and I was definitely getting confirmations about some of this stuff too. And what happened yesterday morning, I woke up thinking of their talk yesterday, Charlie Freak and Jen, and wanted to clarify about Venice as in V Phoenicians versus the PH Phoenicians, because he had said Venice, so I was pretty sure he was talking about Venetians and Rome and the power of the Catholic Church and all that. So I looked it up, and Venetians is a style of painting from Venice, 15th to 16th century, characterized by, and quote unquote, chiefly rich, often warm colors, and illusion of deep space, which I loved that. And it also means Venetian, blind, So it's referencing the Venetians are blind. It's also the tape or the braid for the supporting slats of the blind. And that came up as, oh, that's so interesting, because jam came up. Remember, I was talking about jam versus dam? And jam is the vertical support of a man-made structure. And here the slats of the blind are the jam, the supports of the man-made structure. So jam is also coming up in reference to the Venetian and being blind. Oh, that's so weird. All right, because we're talking about, oh, we'll come up to that too. See, more and more stuff keeps coming up as I go through this. So another header then came up was, and I even looked it up to make sure I pronounced it right today, but it's Acinetobacter, and then Venetianus is a bacteria. It's known to degrade its N, and for me that's code Jesus, dash alkanes, ALKANES, which references alkaline, right? And so, and you of course want the body to be more alkaline because things like cancer make your body very acidic, and that's why we die, because we need our body to be slightly more alkaline than acidic. So this is something that degrades the N-alkaline or the Jesus or alkalineness of our body with potential for bioremediation with high resistance to toxic metals. And this is from biologyonline.com. And any definitions I get are from Wiktionary, or encyclopedia stuff is coming up from en.wikipedia or enm.wikipedia. So it's for bioremediation with high resistance to toxic metals, including cadmium, cobalt, right, which is part of the Covfefe thing, and then arsenic and zinc. So cobalt there. Then online, a stabbing at the Venetian Las Vegas came up, so there may be an underground connection there as well at Las Vegas. So I'm going to call that bacteria AV, so it's not so hard for me to say. The Acinetobacter, it's Venetian with US at the end, Venetianus. So I'm going to call it AV, which is like an arteriovenous fistula as well, which is an abnormal connection, right? It's like a bridge between two structures that don't normally have that connection, like a bridge. So the AV, or the bacteria, is similar to Pseudomonas oleovirens, alkane hydroxylase, and the gene is ALKBFGH. So if you know anyone into science and math or symbology, please forward this information, because it may open up some information that's important that they need to know. This bacteria is an active research topic that was listed in the articles that came up. So some of this stuff is from en.m.wikipedia, and an Italian article came up from 2013 regarding the VE-C3, and there was a picture of an atom with the number 1940 on the middle. So the other numbers around the petals on the atom were 244, 418, 541, 954, and 459. And 954 was actually the AV that we're talking about, the VE-C3. And then I saw a yellow caution sign for the bacteria, which was number 76703517. But the description of the sign came up with orange on it, and I was getting Ancient Orange right away. But the orange thing, there is a connection here, because that comes up, it just wasn't Ancient Orange, but I might be getting this download that Ancient Orange is related to all this. So there was also a picture of antique Venetian trade beads. So again, Venetian glass is related to this, from Ghana via Dugomai. And then the 5 strains again of the bacteria came up, and they all preface the codes with LUH, was referencing, I was getting Lucifer right away, and then the H, I'm not sure, but H for me, I said yesterday, I put in both of my children's name because it's a meaning of inner strength. It may be a different meaning for them. But the different samples here of the 5 strains, they were listed where they came from. One was from Venice, one was from Israel, one was from Denmark, and one was from Hong Kong, and one from Japan. And they were testing these different strains, and it's like a, I'm just getting the imagery of a tar, and it's relating back to the Covfefe. So, and I'll get more into that in a minute. And again, the black grapes, there's a reference to that as well, or the blue grapes. So they were all prefaced by the LUH, the different numbers. The VE-C3 was 4379. The one in Israel was 3904, and that was called RA6-1. The one in Denmark was 5627, coded S1-2. And the one in Hong Kong was LUH 7437, coded CUHK 7025. The one in Japan was LUH 8758, coded T4 equals MBIC 1332. There's also a rough drawing that came up in the pictures that came up in the headers, and it reminded me of the basilica. So there's the reference back to the Basel II and the basilica, but also Rome and the Catholic Church. So there's a reference there. And then some of the terms that I looked up was Venians, and these were all leading into each other. So Venians, VENIENS, but it was also related to VENETUS and ETI, Venetian. So the VENIENS means coming or approaching or being sold as a slave. Venians, being sold as a slave. Venetus is Veneti or Venetian, and that means blue, blue-green, sea blue, and also a racing faction, and notice the race in racing faction, or a team of Roman circus, clothed in blue, or in other words, the blue faction. And again, this is referencing the cobalt blue because of the third eye. It has nothing to do with the blue rays. But you notice how they're going to do similar things of the light to taint it for the light. Okay? So there's going to be a lot of similar symbology because of that. Venetian red comes up as the brownish red color, the pigment from nearly pure ferric oxide, ferric, right, the Fe. And oxidized, and they talk they get oxidized basically. That's why they get high on sorry, my memory is terrible, but the blood, they get high on the blood that they take because there's oxidation push. So it's adrenaline. So that comes up here again. So it's another connection, the ferric oxide of the Venetian red of the hematite type. So that also means blood red, cardinal, Chinese red, and cinnabar, crimson, and also flame came up with some of the color descriptions. Then venenum came up, a potion, juice, poison, or venom, and that's in Sanskrit, venenum. And lust, desire also comes up with that stuff, as well as to strive, wish, love. In Sanskrit, venati means to gain, wish, or erotic lust. Then venereal comes up. So venereus, I didn't have a page yet. And venereus is with EUS or IUS. Neither of those pages were coming up yet. So I looked up venereus online instead of in the Wiktionary, and it came up as Venereus the Hermit, and that was from en.wikipedia.org. And the hermit was in a monastery on the island of Tino in the Ligurian Sea, which is off the coast of Italy. And then later became an abbot. And then Saint Venereus is from the Catholic.org, the patron saint or the lighthouse keepers who died in 409. He was also the second bishop of Milan, 400 to 408, and the first Saint Ambrosi, and friends with Saint Paulius of Nola and Delphinus of Bordeaux, and then Chromatius of Aquileia. And so the chrome was coming up here again for adrenochrome, even though there's no chrome in adrenochrome. Okay, so Chromatius of Aquileia was coming up. had supported and defended the Council of Carthage in 401. And that Council of Carthage in 401, and notice the reference to 401, it's 41 again. The fifth council, the 401, was the fifth council of Carthage that decreed excommunication for any who attended performances on holy days. Actors were forbidden sacrament unless they gave up their profession. And so here's people who supported those people taking the freedom of expression away from the actors. So, and again, that's the Catholic saint, okay, and their friends. So the hermit Saint Venerius, or San Venerio in Italian, 560 to 630, was a monk and a hermit and a patron saint of the Gulf. And then John Galt was coming up when I looked at Gulf. So the Gulf of La Spezia, and as of 1961, which was the year I was born, the patron saint of the lighthouse keepers. So they became that saint as well. So the island of Tino has restricted access as part of the military zone. So, and here's, we're talking about this hermit that was backed up by the Catholic Church, which is supposed to be the Venetians, who are connected to this underground ring. So is this island connected to the underground goings on, the tunneling and stuff like that? There's also a mention when I was reading today about the Illuminati having, a place under the deep sea where they can make, tidal waves and storms come in any time by using the Tesla technology or whatever they have. So the island of Tino has restricted access. Okay, so that's a little island off of Italy, but where Italy meets France. So there is an exception with this island. On September 13th, the feast of Saint Venerius, on that day, there's a statue of him carried out to sea from La Spezia to the island, accompanied by a blessing by the bishop of all boats in the Gulf of La Spezia. So then I went to infogalactic.com to look up information about Carthage. And I meant to look up the council, which I didn't initially, but I did today. So I gave you that information now. And that had to do with taking actors, take them down so they can't be free to express themselves. So Carthage is a city that developed from Phoenician colony in the first millennium BC into capital of an ancient empire. It was the Berber people. It seemed like the Berbers were the natives, and then the settling Phoenicians with a PH, right? The Phoenicians mixed in religion and language, then creating the Punic, the Punic, language and culture. So that was referencing the language and culture of these people. So Carthage, the Phoenician word for that was QART-HADAST. So literally, if you break it down, there's the Q, number one, but then there's art, and we were just talking about the artists being taken down, because that's, if you're have freedom of expression, you'll be happy, right? So we have Q, art, and then HADAST is had a street or had a saint. But we talk about the street fronts as well, or they had a path. The Q art had a past. So this is referencing Carthage, or it means the new city. So Punic is a form of word or speaking. The Phoenician or Carthaginian, the Carthage was founded by the Canaanites, or people who spoke Canaanite. So it went from Canaanite to the Punic form of speaking. So Tyre, Tyre, is basically modern Lebanon, and they were always in a rivalry with Rome and other places, Syracuse and Numidia. But it was very interesting because there was 3 significant wars they listed, but Rome finally conquered the second time, 698. And then there's a reference to Queen Dido or Alyssa of Tyre. Now she was a princess who was exiled from Tyre. And Tunis is Tunis, the country, is referenced as 814 BC. So Aristotle had written a lot on Carthaginian politics, so we won't go in that, but it was just referencing how good they were at governing. And then Queen Dido, the princess, she was also referenced, her name was Alyssa or Alisar. Her king or her father was Belus II, and her brother ended up killing her husband, who was the high priest. And so she was exiled and she left, and she's the one who made from Tyre, she went and made the city Carthage, which was referenced as the shining city, ruling 300 other smaller cities and leading Phoenician or the Punic word. So I guess her exodus was about 70 years when she offered asylum to Aeneas, which is it's really funny because it's like it's also can be pronounced Aeneas, which is like arts and entertainment. Aeneas, which is pretty funny. So Aeneas he escaped from Troy, and so she let him come into her country. But he said God told him he couldn't stay, he had to go to Italy to found Rome. And when he tells her, she's heartbroken and then orders a pyre or someone from her enemy to come so she could fall upon his sword. As she lay dying, the story reads, she predicted eternal strife between Aeneas' people and her own. So in other words, this would create the forever war between Cathars and Rome. The rise up from my bones, avenging spirit, she says, and as an invocation of Hannibal. So the Carthaginians were very exercised in maritime affairs, more so than any other people of that time. So Carthage remains a popular place for tourism, but the main thing here about that was that the modern on the peninsula attracts more wealthy residents, tends to be the political pole, a place of emblematic power, if not actually the capital, leaving to Tunis, the rest of the country, the economic and administrative roles. So there's like this very wealthy area, then again, could have a connection to what we're talking about. The Punic remains as a street or a storefront, cisterns installed in the basements to collect water for domestic use. There's a long corridor on the right of each of these residences that led to a courtyard with a sump, like a sump pump, with other various elements, some covered with mosaics or punica pavement using red mortar. Eastern Roman Empire finally subdued, and they're referencing the Vandals here, or the Aryans. And they captured Carthage and advanced into so this is the Africans, right? Because it's Africa into Lebanon, that whole area. So the Africans had captured Carthage and advanced into Atlas mountains. So here's the reference to Atlas. And then the Roman imperials withdrew from Africa except for Ceuta, Ceuta. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. So the Roman Carthage was destroyed, so then it was called Tunis. So the country Tunis is Carthage. So then on Facebook, a restaurant from Germany came up called Venerius, and they had a video message that said, "You are Laub," where each person stood up with a letter, and "You are Laub" means leave, holiday, or vacation, and Laub, L-A-U-B, means foliage or greenage, leaves. It's also a suit in German playing cards, so referencing tarot cards. So you are Laub. So it's referencing, the restaurant as a holiday or vacation place. But again, here's this Venerius. So then I went into the Cathars versus the Carthage versus Cathars. These are like tongue twisters because they're all very similar to mess you up, so you don't understand whether they're the good guys or the bad guys. We have Carthage versus Cathars, which went into catharsis. So catharsis, and it's CATHERSIS, references that adrenaline rush of drama and release, and cathartic, actually means laxative. It relaxes. So the Cathars in enwikipedia.org were very strong in giving women independence, more equal to the men. And in reincarnation, that would happen until you committed to self-denial of the material world. So becoming, transcending the material world. Carthaginian society was based on wealth solely, not even land ownership, but just how much wealth they had. So that's the difference between the Cathars and the Carthage. So then I went on to Bibliothèque of Pleiades, or APLEYADES.net, Bibliothèque first, and then that. The Secrets of the Cathars. It was originally published in Atlantis Rising, December 2002, from 1208 to 1244, and it's written by William Henry. The first European Holocaust, where the Church of Rome savagely attacked the Cathars, and I'm personally familiar with this because I was in the south of France at the Cathars' castle the year 2017, when the Catholics actually formally apologized for killing those Cathars, who were peaceful heretics of the Languedoc of southern France. So Languedoc is an important term here. The Cathar equals Greek katharos, or pure, and that's from Britannica.com. And the Cathars were considered the pure ones, after the goddess known as the pure one, the Virgin Great Mother, or in other words, the Creator Mother Mary, but with an I, M-A-R-I, which means love. The Book of Love. So the Book of Mary, or the Book of Tara, T-A-R-A. And Tara means the number 9. It also means to collect, meet, welcome. It means to be flawed, or be the thorn in the side, right? It means the road, the path, the defect, the imperfect, the earth, the ground, to follow, to touch. It means equal. It means fence, garden, star, washboard, and horn. It means mindful and someone who cares, okay? Tara. So this is all about the positive aspect of the Book of Love, okay? The divine. And this was attributed to Jesus having given it to John, the divine. And the Cathars were like hiding the information so it wouldn't get into the wrong hands. Transmitted through centuries until the Knights Templar and the Cathars adopted it. The Cathar Church of Love. The existence of this lost or hidden gospel was revealed when the Catholic Church subjected the Cathars and the Templar in 1308 to torture. Contents of the secret skill, and symbolized by the Templar skull, is said to grant one ability to control forces of nature in order to transform the ordinary human blood into that of the wise, the holy and pure blood of the life of the immortal, which then referenced the term Illi, I-L-L-I, or Illuminati. And Illi means sheep, or to die, right? Those who will follow, or to die. And it's equated with the Holy Grail. And the Holy Grail is referenced there by the Cathars as a process, not a thing. So here, you're seeing the close tie between two things of good and evil. So the Council of Nine, the Illuminati also references themselves as the Council of Nine, as the perfectibus. I don't know if I wrote that down right. Adam Weishaupt was the founder of the Illuminati in 1775, the Order of the Illumined Wise Men, Ancient Seers of Bavaria. So it's literally the Ancient Illumined Seers of Bavaria. And that was 1941. Here's the reference of 41 again. Iraq, and the Illuminati, the Illuminatus. If you look up Illuminati, it doesn't come up. It comes up as Illuminatus. And Illuminatus, or however you want to pronounce it, lists many different things, but they're all alternative mystic sects, right? Secret sects. We have the Spanish sect, by prayer could ascend to do no good works, right? Because you could ascend past that. In other words, stay at the 0 point, and then therefore you don't have to do any good works. Be a member of the Rosicrucian order, the Brother Order of the Rose Cross. Baptized by church with a light and taper, or the French sect. Hastecasts and mystics and quietists. And quietists hadn't been updated yet either. But the Rose Cross came from German mystics and secret society. And again, the founder was this Adam Weishaupt of Bavaria. So in 1839, and here's, remember I told you about jam and dam when we just talked about that? Well, there's a reference to jam because in 1839, Sayyid Jamal, or Jam ad-Din, was a Muslim mystic, or al-Afghani. He was a Shiite Muslim, a sage of the East. And he was enrolled in special schools, right? The initiated into the mysteries by the followers of the Sheikh Ahmad Asay, 1753 to 1826. He spent years in India, Caucasus, Central Asia, and before resurfacing in Afghanistan as the senior advisor to the pro-Russian ruler. And so the question here from the writer, William Henry, was why would they go to India and not Mecca's, where all the other Muslims would want to go to? So it appears he was one of the few Illuminati to actually have set foot in the hidden city of Shambhala. So Jamal trended towards occult circles. Elena Petrovna Han Blavatsky from the 1850s and 60s and Madame Blavatsky met for the last time in Paris, 1884. Jamal became friendly with the directors of the Illuminati headquarters at Joom, Joom. It's spelled D-J-O-U-M, but it's pronounced Joom, which is very similar to that jam, right? That supports the artificial man-made structure. Italian Carbonari, which were charcoal makers, the Illuminati began to replicate the coal makers in all the countries of the Middle East. Jamal began sowing the dragon's teeth, quote unquote, in Istanbul and then Cairo, where he became the advisor to the Grand Mufti. The nephew of the latter-day Grand Mufti of Cairo is Dr. Ayman, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, but he's second in command of the Al-Qaeda. Istanbul, Jamal, and Omer Pasha organized the Masonic Lodge, the Golden Square. Now, the Golden Square has many meanings. It's their symbol is the compass and square symbol of the Freemasonry, --J-T. And so I looked up the Golden Square because there's many references to it. It also references the four most important leaders of the Circle of Seven of the Sunni Arabs. Also, there's this Golden Square in central London, Soho, Pompano Beach, Florida, Dubai, and the Golden Square could be referenced as Phi as well, P-H-I. All right, and Masons, it's the G on the symbol references not God, but geometry, and regarding the Masons. So the Golden Square idea caught on with officer corps of the Ottoman Turkish army and caught on like wildfire in Iraq, especially the Sunni Triangle around Tikrit. World War I, the Ottoman Empire collapsed October of 1918, and a new League of Nations gave Iraq to the UK as a mandate. So, of course, then that spurred on the guerrilla warfare through 1925. And in 1920, the new Golden Square Grand Master arrived in Baghdad with new lodges. He took on a lawyer and organized a national revolution. So the new kingdom of Iraq, now independent, and joined the League of Nations. And the initial king was King Faisal, which then the Illuminati general launched a pogrom against the Assyrian Christians, the ones who didn't see Jesus as the equal to God, massacring thousands over the protest of the king. So he died and his son was taken over, Ghazi, which was member of the Brotherhood himself. He ruled about 3 years until the general didn't want him there anymore and overthrew the government in the Arab world's first military coup. So then the general was assassinated because of his Socialist Party connections, and there were 6 more coups that happened quickly before it paved the way for the rise for Rashid Ali, 1940, right, to prepare for 1941. 1932, the Golden Square received help from an unexpected source, the German mystics of the Thule Society. Fritz Grobe, Grobe, was the ambassador to Baghdad, and his relative, Arthur Grobe, actually had probably coined the term the first time a world war was used, the 1914 World War in Prophecy. In 1033, Grobe purchased an Iraqi daily newspaper, and it had terrible circulation, so he posted Hitler's book in there, which increased the circulation a little bit, and then he put the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, and it jumped into the millions. So everybody in Iraq was reading this, including unlettered people or shepherd-like people. You notice the sheep that just came up, like Hussein, which ended up being the stepfather of Saddam Hussein. So just so to give you perspective, Tyre and Carthage are basically modern Lebanon, and then we have Tunis as well, because Carthage became Tunis. So Lebanon and Tunis. It's called, the city's there, I guess it's the country's Tunisia. So then there were newspaper wars here. So they dragged the Jews into this. There's a Jewish-owned daily paper, Al-Hassad, and the Golden Square was building a big national revolution with the Arab Cultural Society and the Butana bin Hartha Society. There was a book against Iran and the Jews, --J.T., which is their signature. And it became the voice of the National Revolution, but the Golden Square founded a different kind of movement along with the Hitler Youth, with the young Iraqis, modeled after their youth. So by 1939, he had 63,000 members with uniforms, battalions, daily lectures, and military training, all fanatically loyal to Rashid Ali. April 1st, 41, the Golden Square struck. There was a coup in Baghdad and proclaimed Ali the new prime minister. And they opened negotiations for a military alliance with Hitler's Third Reich. In 1936, the Jews started being murdered. You know, there was a lot of things that happened that just caused a lot more violence. And this is what they wanted to do. You know, they want to put people into fear so that they can gain their power or their energy from them. Churchill then ousted Ali in Basra, May 16th, 41, and swiftly also took Baghdad on May 30th. Ali fled Iran. And before that, they were developing a new guerrilla army, the Youth Battalions, --JT, for attacks on the enemies of Iraq. June 1st, 41, was the Jewish festival of Shvat, and they were meeting a pro-British regent and were attacked by a mob of Iraqi soldiers and civilians that had been trained, right? So there was anti-Jewish riots all over Baghdad. A lot of people were killed. Crushing of body organs of babes in arms, along with women and men, young and old. And just, you know, it was the Golden Square members were then exiled finally, and then they went underground once more. There was more violence toward the Jews in Iraq, 1742, and then in July 24th, 43, 10 Iraqis met at the hotel in Damascus, the capital of Syria, to found a new order, the El-Ba'ath. This is the Risorgimento --JT. April 47, first meeting of the Ba'ath Party held at Fallujah in Iraq. The Golden Square had risen again at that point. So we're back to the Jesus Code by William Henry, The Secrets of the Cathars, again in Bibliotech, apleiades.net, APLEYADES. And the Cathar belief was to make the human body worthy vehicle for the light of the Holy Spirit, or love. The Holy Grail was not a cup, but a process. The home, the Languedoc, was named after the pre-flood language system that the Cathar priests claimed that Jesus preached in the language of OC, possibly short for alchemy, which was a corruption of the word alchemy. The place name is Cathar, Jesus code. So the Languedoc. So you see that on the paper I have in front of you, the Languedoc. It's possibly short for alchemy, a corruption of the word alchemy. And then the OC is the root for octo, or 8, and ocular, which is the eye. The Egyptian word AK equals light, and AKER equals light being. AK-HU is the archetypical cosmic man of light, found in most of the Hermetic and Gnostic teachings. So there's also some proof from the Eskimos, driven out of some unknown homeland. A sequence of initiation concludes that the Languedoc, or L'Ang-AK-OQ, virtually is the same word as Languedoc, and it means lightning or illumination. The Languedoc consists of a mystic light which the shaman suddenly feels in their body, inside their head, within the brain, an inexplicable searchlight, a luminous fire, which enables him to see with both eyes, both literally and metaphorically speaking, for he can now, even with closed eyes, see through the darkness and perceive things and coming events which are hidden from others. Enlightenment from highly symbolic language of Ak. Then they listed what I'm showing you on the piece in front of you that you can see. The phoenix symbol, the heron, which is Egyptian. The bird of light, AKH, matches the fish of Jesus, which I realized is actually the two circles of the flower of life overlapping. It's the symbology of two as one. The petal of the flower of life. And that was my input right there. That wasn't from this. As soon as I saw the fish, I realized in this connection of the 8 and everything, it's what I showed you the other day with the 2 eyes and the shutter lenses being the 2 parts of the flower coming together. And it's also the same as the OC, which also looks like a fish in the circular fashion. The math sign sometimes used for the infinity, OC, octo, or 8. So then cryptocracy comes up, a section from William Henry, ruling by secrecy, from the Catholic Church and the Nazis, and today, of course, science cryptocracy, and the persecution of an evangelists of the 0 point. Cold fusion and other enlightened technologies. So Rome had made all other God and God teachings the devil. So any deities that were worshipped made those people the devil. So that was equated, they equated Lucifer and the devil with bearers of the teachings of light. Said the Cathars, the church was the devil, the fallen, who destroyed Jesus' true teachings. And having been there, I went through all of the Mary Magdalene hot spots there in the south of France. That was the purpose of the tour. And that was actually Mercedes Kirkle, if you want to check out the Mary Magdalene path. She I don't know if she's going this year, but she goes every year to the south of France to frequent the Mary Magdalene places. So there was a lot, we learned a lot of information about the Cathars and Jesus having come back with Mary Magdalene. I haven't actually been with her daughter. And so there was, a lot of information from the Cathars. It's like this secret information that they were trying to protect from the dark energies. The Aryan connection, the difference between Catholic and Catharic is in Christianity is perfectly explained or encoded between the word elements OL and AR or ARI that differentiate these two words. OL means all or whole, and the desire of the Catholic Church to be a universal religion. The AR equals before, and ARI, the root of Aryan. Aryans said Jesus stood between God and man, as opposed to being the same as God. The Nicene said he was God, and so they won more votes, and then the Aryans became heresy. ARIA, or Aryan, means noble, cultured, highborn, pure, or Catharic. Hitler and Himmler with profound interest in Cathars, because they were Aryan, not blonde hair and blue-eyed, but noble wise blood of the God race. Hitler sought to create a super race through eugenics, or in other words, learning to be in 0 point. The Cathars' blood secrets were as pure as gold to him. All right, they want to know the secrets. So the next section from William was Children of Atlantis. This is William Henry. The AR in Egypt hieroglyphics means to make, do, to create, to form, to fashion. ARI is the creative god. ARI-EN is made by, produced by the lady of the house. The Cathar's prominent lady, Marie, their divine goddess. 1934, when FDR sent someone to Mongolia in search of the Grail, Walter Andrea discovered a magnificent 3,200-year-old statue of Marie at the site of her temple in Syria, which I'm going to show you. Nope, that's not it. Okay, so that's what they were talking about. The goddess with a vase, holding the Grail cup and wearing the helmet that Sitchin says could make her go far into the universe. She wears a cluster of blue stones at her neck. So again, this references the blue grapes, the dark blue grapes, which actually look black, and used the helmet when she tended the pillar in which her husband, a wise serpent, called E.A. by the Sumerians. He could drill holes in space, or in other words, wormholes or portals. Marie and E.A. prototypes Eve and the serpent, Yahweh's antagonists in the Hebrew Garden of Eden story. Eden and Atlantis became this one and the same, E.A. Eden and Atlantis. Enki is her serpent king, called Poseidon. Cathar's linkage with Marie and Ea and their Aryan or Atlantean connection assured their extermination. Enki, E-N-K-I, is the great Anunnaki scientist featured in Sumeria epic poems romanticizing the works of Sitchin. The Gnostics called him the Great Light. Sitchin maintains Ea genetically modified the human race as a slave race. So Enki versus his brother Enlil, E-N-L-I-L, brought their rivalry down to the earth. Ea and his priests to lift up humanity, and the gods through the global education and revelation of all sacred texts, and Enlil's priests seek slaves and sex objects, police state, and cryptocracy. Sumerians made it clear that Ea put knowledge in the human blood, that remnants of the pure pre-flood race created by the Ea exists in secret refuges called the Mount of Salvation in Grail romances around the world. So the vineyards of the Languedoc and the hyper-mysterious Renaissance Chateau are considered one of these locations, these secret locations. So here, the next section he wrote was, the land there eateth up the people. And this referenced Moses. It's referencing Moses. So Ea depicted as half human, half serpent, right? And half human and half fish. The serpent and the fish symbolizes the priesthood. One who adopted this symbol, the fish, was considered Israelite warrior Joshua, key episode in his story. Remarkable connection between Ea, the Israelites, the Cathars, and the Languedoc. So in the book of Numbers 13, Moses was leading the Israelites to the promised land, and before entering, Yahweh, or Enlil, flying high in the pillar of light, ordered them to stop short and send spies to search Canaan. Actually, it was a search for secrets of the Anunnaki and the Ea. One of Moses' operatives was Joshua, and the son of Nun, N-U-N, which equals fish. In Proto-Sinaitic Hebrew alphabet glyphs, the letter N-U-N was drawn as a serpent, the eternally regenerating life, the zero, like in the Q that I described, the immortality. So one of Moses' operatives was Joshua, the son of Nun. Joshua, the Greek Jeshua of Jesus, with the symbol of the fish. Joshua equals Yeshua in Greek, or the Jesus symbol of the fish, thought to represent the opening of the uterus or the womb and the door of life. Jesus and Joshua went to the valley of Eshcol. the valley of cluster or grapes, where they spied on the sons of Anak or Anun, A-nun, the circle, and that's where like the Q-nun, where that comes up, the fish serpent, and described not as humans but as giants. We saw the sons of Anak, which came of the giant Sumerians, called giants, the Nephilim in Hebrew, the Anunnaki, which literally translates as fish, serpent of light. When spies left the vineyard of the giants, like in the story Jack and the Beanstalk, they stole a branch heavy with grapes from the Anunnaki, and it took 2 men to carry because they were so heavy, but then counseled Moses that it would be a nightmare to try to attack these vineyards because of the walled fortress, but worse, that Joshua saw that the Escol is a land that had eateth up the inhabitants thereof. So was this the plague? Was this a cave? Was this a spaceship that came down? But spaceships were often referenced as clouds in the Bible, so they would have used the word cloud. So in his research, realized it was a stargate or a wormhole that ate up the people. The Anunnaki, possibly along with EA, or the serpent man, in charge of operating a stargate, the door to heaven, in the vineyard at Escol. Joshua stole its secrets, symbolized by the cluster of grapes. So again, here is the man, half snake, and this is the half serpent offers the secrets of the stars. And then we have this is Moses who lifted the healing serpent, EA, transmitted his wisdom to Joshua. It came from Egypt. And then here is that symbology of the grapes in the serpent's mouth. And there was another symbol, and I want to write it down really quick so you can see what it looks like. The symbol of grapes that comes in the next section that he writes is like this. I'll just show you really quick. All right, so this is the other symbol that comes up. All right, so it's like an upside down tree with 3 grapes, okay? And that's referencing the 3 grapes in his mouth right there. So the EA, we are told, this is now the section called the mother substance. The EA, we are told, came to earth from heaven in search of gold, rare metals, and radioactive materials such as uranium or cobalt, blue stones that could transmute a person into L, or shining one, i.e. a pure one, or Aryan. All right, so blue stones, and of course indigo references the third eye. So the Sumerian god of smithcraft and alchemy, a priesthood developed around EA's alchemical teachings, and were symbolized by that upside down tree I just showed you. So it's literally like an upside down tree of grapes. The symbol for the 5th essence or quintessence, also called wood, which came up in their talk yesterday about a totally different thing with Jen and Charlie Freak. The symbol for the 5th essence or quintessence, also called wood, or the word, the exotic black or hidden or occult pure mother substance upon which the world was built. The cluster of grapes or blue apples, oh that's right, it's blue apples, but it's like black grapes, or blue apples as they are called in Rennes-le-Château. Later became the cryptograms, and that's where I was, in the south of France actually. The cryptograms extremely important to the Essenes and the Gnostic Grail heretics that they held sacred and secret. The Cathar watermarks showed a serpent hanging on a cross, spitting the word of this. So that was the word. That's the symbol for the word. Spitting the word symbol. So that picture there that you're looking at, the bas relief from Sion, Switzerland, illustrates the belief in the theft of the blue apples from the Anunnaki and the crucifixion of Jesus from the Old Testament scenes, grouped together as if they happened at the same time. Jesus and EA, as a serpent on the cross, with the Gnostic crucifixion, was a stargate or a wormhole, along with, and this is, I'm sorry, it's after that. Along with this picture, which literally references Joshua and his companion appearing as the two thieves at the crucifixion that were hung along with him. The blue apples, or a skull, and is that the Languedoc, represents a powerful physiological knowledge, the means to transform human blood into the blood of light, in preparation to enter the gate of God. Hundreds to thousands of Cathars were murdered because of this ultimate secret of the symbol of the fish, and can happen again. And so then I wanted to go into Venetians versus Phoenicians, because I hadn't touched on that yet, the V Phoenicians versus the PH Phoenicians. And so I went into Phoenicia.org, and they referenced a difference between the Phoenician with a P, Celts, and the Venetian Phoenicians. All right, so two different PH Phoenicians, the Celts and the Venetians. So the Celts was spelled with a C or a K, and this was coming up from mh004.infi.net. And the Venetian Phoenicians, the Celts and the early Picts, the Picts, or the Chaldees, were the small people considered the Aborigines there. The Phoenicians assimilated over time with them and mixed, incorrectly called the Celts. The Chaldees, or the Golat, or Gaul, of Van and Eastern Asia Minor and Mesopotamia in the Stone Age. So those are the Aborigines. They were actually in England when the Phoenicians arrived. So the Phoenicians invaded England 1103 BC and found the Picts there. The Phoenicians were the Aryans in race, speech, and script. Now there's a difference also between the English and the Brits. So the Britons and the Scots were opposed to the Aboriginal dark non-Aryan people. The English were the royal line, were the Anglo-Saxons from Germany. They weren't the Brits. The Brits descend the Britons from Phoenicia, and Phoenicians had been in the British Isles since ancient times. So the British Isles are very important here, because although the Picts were in England, the Phoenicians had been in the British Isles since ancient times. So Venetians established the Bank of England in 1694. So the Bank of England is actually Venetian, not English, and may have been Jewish Venetians of the time. In any case, the Rothschilds could actually be their servants, the servants of these people. Venetian connects are either the Venetians to the Phoenicians connect are either a degree of religious or Celtic similarity, the Babylonian mystery religion, or similar in oligarchical government, small circle of wealthy ruling families with a corporate system of collective dynasty investment banking, misnamed Venetia Republic. So then I was on this website that I just told you, and they had a whole list of other topics to go into, but most of them wouldn't open. How Venetian virus infected and took over England, because there may be a similarity to that. Chinese Opium War, and that came up for me when I was just researching the dynasties last week or the week before. So, and there was a big opium thing, to get people high so they could control them. So the same thing, this topic came up, the Chinese Opium War, the Queen of England pushes dope. Another header was the Venetian conspiracy. And then I opened that, and the first header there was the digital twin. And then another header that came up was Moscow, the third Rome, because there's definitely a connection here to Moscow as well, and the Middle East, obviously. And that was coming up, radixii.com, the digital twin. So the color purple was big here with Phoenician. Phoenician means, they all mean purple in some way. Phoenician, the modern Lebanon, some of Syria, some of Palestine, and it can actually go as far as Gaza, the modern Phoenicians. So, of course, that purple was considered very royal. Canaan was the 2nd millennium BC, ancient Near East, the Phoenicians, Palestine, Israel. That was all coming up around that sequence. So Canaan meant to be low, humble, subjugated, or the lowlands, in contrast to the quote-unquote highlands of Aram, or Hurrian Kinahu, refers to the color purples. So Canaan and Phoenicia would be synonyms, both meaning purple. Phoenicians from the product of their glass making, making purple cloth, and it's also mentioned in Exodus in the Bible. And the Tyrian people that ended up being the Cathars with the queen. So it got crazy windy right here. It was 4:33 and a storm came in right at 4:44. I was thinking about the flower of life, confirming the two circles coming together, because I've never seen that explanation before. But I believe the fish is literally a petal of the flower of life. It's prepping. As I was prepping to do your video yesterday, that came up at 4:44. So that's all the information I had from the read. So let me know in the comments if there's anything that you can bring up. I do have a Divine Masculine read I'm going to do for you as well. As soon as I did the read, there was more stuff that came up regarding this, which is why I could go back and add some more information about it. And so it's really important that we share information, because I obviously am not an expert at quantum physics. I'm not an expert in history at all. You know, history is probably my worst subject when I was in school. So it's important that those type of people get a hold of the codes I'm getting so that they can expand on it and make sense mathematically, scientifically, historically. And it will be put together for something else, and maybe connect, and even the military, in order to connect the places that these underground places are. So again, I hope this was helpful to you guys. You know, make sure you drink your water, get your rest, get your joy, get your nature. Yep. Be good to yourselves and rise and be love, you guys. I will talk to you soon. I'm going to do a video for you.